Russia launching yet another massive attack across Ukraine using more than 600 drones and missiles as President Trump is set to sit down with Ukrainian President Zelensky at the UN General Assembly this week. Fox News senior strategic analyst, retired four-star General Jack Keane joining us now. General, good morning. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of yet another attack? As we mentioned, 600 attack drones. You got, I think, 8 ballistic missiles, 32 cruise missiles, some of it launched even in the western part of Ukraine. Your reaction?
Yeah, well, you gotta know where Putin's head really is. You know, he's 3.5+ years into this war, and he hasn't been able to achieve his military objectives, which is take control of Ukraine, both military and politically. But he hasn't given up on those objectives, Griff. That's the reality of it. And what we see here is he's absolutely convinced that the best pathway forward to achieve those objectives is by escalating the war. And that's what we're seeing, an air campaign with the escalation you just noted, which has been going on now for a number of weeks. He's also expanding that in a limited way, but also in a historic way into eastern Ukraine, into Eastern Europe, NATO countries with that. And that is historic, not seen, you know, since World War II, the reality of what we're dealing with here. So, and also he's expanding his ground campaign in the Donbass region. Why is he doing all of that? Because he's absolutely convinced, look, the West hasn't done anything that convinced me that this strategy is not going to work. And enter, I think, what the West can do. We are holding the cards. And what Putin is trying to convince us of is that a military victory is inevitable. And he believes he can wear out the West, the United States and the Europeans and the Ukrainians. But the reality is we're holding the cards. If we double down on the sanctions that it looks like it's going to happen and also help Ukraine militarily, he cannot take Ukraine. We can stop him, and that'll force him to the negotiating table.
You're so right, General Keane, that the West is holding the cards, and it'll be interesting to see what comes of President Trump's conversation on the sidelines with President Zelensky. I want to just go to something else real quickly, though, because you just returned last night from Israel. You met with President Netanyahu, President Herzog, ahead of tomorrow at the UN. There will be this symbolic announcement. Some Western allies will actually recognize a Palestinian state in defiance of Trump's wishes. What are your thoughts about what we're going to witness with that, what the reaction will be? And tell me about your trip you just returned from.
Yeah, well, the major takeaways on the trip is, first of all, the appreciation that Israelis writ large have for America. And certainly, as a result of President Trump and his decision to support Israel, obviously with the decisive attack on Iran, but also unequivocal military support and moral support, which was certainly quite different from the previous administration. Everywhere you go, once they knew you're an American, they feed back to you about that. And I saw, coming in from the airport on the side of a building, something that struck me was a picture of President Trump and Charlie Kirk embracing eeach other. It took up the whole side of the building. It was quite remarkable. I told the guys, grab a picture of that. And people all out throughout Israel, much to my surprise, are very much aware of Charlie Kirk and what he stood for. The second thing is, it's hard to understate the strategic geopolitical paradigm shift that has taken place in the Middle East as a result of Israel's domination of Iran and also its proxies. It's not finished by a long shot. And there's work to be done in Gaza. There's still work to be done against Hezbollah and the Houthis, and we got to monitor Iranians. But the truth is, it opens up diplomatic opportunities, normalization possibly with Syria, hard work to be sure, normalization with Lebanon, more hard work, but possibilities that didn't exist before, regenerating the Abraham Accords. What do we do about the people of Gaza? Israelis have surveyed informally the people of Gaza. Would they accept a voluntary relocation to another country? Many would like to do that and get away from their suffering. Yeah. Well, that's a huge opportunity to take away this issue of the humanitarian and obviously physical crisis that the Hamas has imposed on the Gazan people. huge opportunities here. The United States is going to play a large role in all of this. Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to meet with the president tomorrow. They are joined at the hip, based on what I've seen and talking to both of them. And I think together with allies in the region, there's a positive thing that's going to come out of this. As I said, that's a seminal event, major change in a positive way for the Middle East.
Well, boy, that would be very good news indeed. General Jack Keane, thank you. And thank you for that little anecdotal story. Fascinating to see President Trump and Charlie Kirk, even in Israel. General Keane, thank you very much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.